Okay, Dr. Borsa.
Okay, I'd like to bring up for discussion the need for accuracy when making public comments about Board of Education decisions or Board of Education business or other related topics that we do as school board members. Specifically, I want to discuss comments made to the public this summer regarding the school system policy on alcohol. Now, let me back up for just a minute to last week's meeting. If you're watching the school board meeting last week, we discussed the alcohol policy. And one thing that we discussed is that if you are attending a professional meeting or attending a training session, you're gone away for a few days, is it acceptable to have a glass of wine or a beer before dinner, when students are not present at the event, of course? Now, Mrs. Cannon told us last week that she's our school board attorney, that she's frequently asked this question, and she always says, are you on your own time? If your boss calls a dinner meeting and you're working through the clock, then no alcohol. But what is far more generally the case at professional meetings is that you might be with other employees, but you are on your own time. You're in a social environment. And it is okay to have a glass of wine, a beer before dinner. And at last meeting, all the school board members who were in attendance agreed that that's fine. This is our present practice, and we're all comfortable with that. And we're all on board that is acceptable. But I want to bring up an additional point, and that is having alcohol is permissible, but you must pay for the alcohol yourself. The school system does not pay for alcohol. Repeat, the school system does not pay for alcohol for its employees, and it has not for decades. I have a policy right here from the 80s, in fact, to show how long this policy has been on the books, and I'm going to read from it. It says, the school system will not reimburse employees for alcoholic beverages that they purchase as part of a reimbursable meal. Employees are not prohibited from consuming alcoholic beverages, but they must pay personally for all such beverages. Now, what I would like to address is that on July 21st, Mrs. Crook, you made several statements in a public forum, a radio talk show, and I was so surprised to hear your statements that I got a transcript of your comments. And you stated that at a school board convention that you attended 6 years ago, school system funds were used to purchase alcohol. And you also stated that when you returned to Frederick, you personally initiated creating a policy to prevent this occurrence. And I'll read briefly from your transcript. I'll just read a couple of sentences. When I came back from that trip, I brought this up and said, you know, how can we be doing this? How can we be using school money to pay for this alcohol? And that is when we came up with our first alcohol policy for employees, that employees would not purchase alcohol with school system money. Mrs. Crook, I want to have a discussion because the statements you made in a public forum are simply untrue, and they are misleading the public. You are misleading the public with these false statements, and they are very serious as to school board conduct at this meeting. I believe that the public deserves to hear why you made those statements.
Well, I guess you listened to the show then, right?
I've got everything you said right here.
Okay, there you go. Well, if the public wishes to know why I made those statements, then they'll ask. But what I was referring to, there's actually two different references. One was when our former superintendent, and let me say former to make that completely and utterly clear, that it's not our current superintendent. Please make that completely clear. That our former superintendent, when the board went on the national school board trip to California, purchased alcohol at an evening event at a dinner meeting. Okay, it was dinner with the board. We weren't really doing any business, and put it on a procurement card, a school system procurement card. That's a fact. That's not my opinion. That's a fact. I was there and I witnessed it. Okay? That's one particular instance. Now, I didn't go into that level of detail on the radio, but seeing as how you're bringing this up on camera, on television, and you're asking me, I will tell you. Here's the other instance. The other instance that I witnessed, and I was there, and so I can speak from actual, from actually being there, was at the MABE conference. Now, I haven't been to a MABE conference in several years. That's actually true. That's absolutely true. But the 2 MABE conferences I did attend, there was open bar. There was happy hour in the afternoon, late afternoon, and early evening, okay? And the school board didn't pay for that. What I said was that the school board goes to those meetings. Every school board in the state of Maryland goes to MABE, the annual MABE conference, okay? And that happy hour is paid for at that time. Granted, I haven't been in several years, but I was speaking of that particular time, is paid for by the legal school system, legal attorneys. Okay. Well, you know what? When I was there, it was. When I was there, it was.
Business
corporate sponsors.
Yeah. It's
Corporate
Johnson
business
Controls,
and
corporate sponsors pay for the
I wasn't
alcohol.
referring to Johnson Controls, and I didn't even mention Johnson Controls.
I'm listing that as an
Okay.
example of a corporate
Okay.
sponsor.
But I'm just telling you that at the time, they were lawyers that school systems throughout this state hire to represent the school systems themselves, and they're allowed to do that, to hire to go up against parents who have special education children that they feel, that the parents feel aren't getting their services. So, I'm sorry you didn't like what I said, but what I said was factual. I was at those 2 particular situations. I witnessed those 2 particular situations.
I was also in San Francisco, and a procurement card was not used to pay for that alcohol. Now, we don't have to go into he said, she said,
Okay.
but let me ask you this.
Okay.
Why did you say that when you came back, you initiated a policy that we were not allowed to pay for alcohol?
I brought it
The
up to
policy has been on the books for decades, and you claimed that no policy existed and that it was your intervention that made us create a policy. There is no rebuttal for that.